Welcome back, everyone. It's always so heart-filling to bring you people and messages, teachings that are truly right for the times. And that's definitely what we're doing today. I have a very special guest on today. Her name is Spring Washam. She's a very respected Dharma teacher. She's an author and she's a visionary leader. She resides in Atlanta, Georgia. Her works include the insightful A Fierce Heart, Finding Strength, Courage, and Wisdom in Any Moment, and her latest literary contribution, The Spirit of Harriet Tubman, Awaking from the Underground. As a founding teacher of the East Bay Meditation Center in Oakland, California, Spring has dedicated her life to the teachings of Buddhism, receiving extensive training under the guidance of Jack Kornfield. She's a member of the Teachers Council at Spirit Rock Meditation Center, Northern California, and has delved deeply into both Theravada and Tibetan Buddhist traditions since 1999. And she's been leading residential retreats since 2004. Spring's spiritual journey is enriched by her practices as a shamanic healer, having studied in the upper Amazon region of Peru for many years. She founded Lotus Vine Journeys, an innovative organization that seamlessly integrates indigenous healing traditions with Buddhist wisdom in the heart of South America. Since 2008, she has immersed herself in various indigenous healing modalities, sharing her knowledge and insights through workshops and classes globally. Her teachings and writings have been featured in numerous publications, including Lion's Roar, Tricycle, and Belief.net. Spring Washam's teachings offer a path of inner strength, compassion, and profound transformation to all who seek her guidance. She's also the co-founder of Spirit Underground Liberation Project and Church, located in Atlanta, Georgia. Well, this conversation is totally unscripted. We cover these times, how to meet these very unpredictable, fast changing times, what elements of ourselves we're going to want to build and focus on, how to meet impermanence, how to work with anger, and so many other topics. I know you're going to absolutely love this. You're going to want to probably listen to this conversation again and again because there's a lot of rich wisdom that I'm still integrating from Spring. Here we go. There we go. We're live. Spring, I'm so glad to have you back. No one will ever hear our first recording because it crashed. But as we were saying, everything in divine time.
Absolutely. There's always a magic in the moments that we do meet and have these conversations. So glad to be back with you.
Yeah, it's really nice to see you. And for folks who are listening and not getting the visual, like I'm just taking in your beautiful background and crystals and plants. I'm already feeling very grounded and soothed
Oh, good.
being in your presence. As I mentioned last time when we met, one of the reasons that I really wanted to speak to you is because a lot of the language and practices around trauma informed care, trauma recovery are steeped in safety building, which is of course very important. But at some point, we got to go in there. And at the same time that we're building that safety, I think we're building it for the reason of setting us up for being able to go into the stuff, not avoid the stuff. And I think that's a place that people can get a little bit confused. And I think it's an
Mm.
area that I've found from your work, you're really strong in, and you could offer some insight into for us.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to feel. Yeah, it
Yeah.
is so hard. We think of a lot of these things intellectually. We want liberation. We want to be free, but we don't know how to be embodied and actually go into the feelings. And they are scary. It's hard, it's painful at times. But I think that in this moment in time, so much of our work has to be embodied now. We have to be feeling, we have to be alive. And so there's an invitation for folks to kind of dig deeper and go way more into the heart and be with what is there.
Mm,
And it does call on a kind of power. And it's easy to get confused in that because we avoid feelings that are hard. So intuitively we run away, right? And like kind of not intuitively, like kind of just conditionally we run away,
yeah.
right? Our habit is to escape, like to go into this is bad, versus no, to go into this is where the liberation actually is in that moment.
Yeah.
So it's a lot to that.
How are some ways folks can start like reconditioning and tapping into their emotions, especially if they've been denying them or covering them up?
Yeah, well, one of the biggest ways I think is through the heart, right? Because the heart carries the joy and the sorrow of this life and the grief and the loss. And so a lot of times we avoid our heart and just live in the mind. So a lot of the things that I'm teaching and focusing on right now are helping the people come back into the heart to find that resonance
Yeah.
and like the great heart, and in that place we can access this deep well of compassion that can allow us to navigate those feelings. We don't go alone. We bring compassion as our guide,
Mm.
and so for me, I'm getting people more and more in touch with their heart versus lost in the mind. My mind is a child. It can't hold anything, but the heart has deep roots,
Yeah.
and capacity and depth, and it's alive. It's like it's like a satellite star system.
Mm.
So that is my work, just in my own practice, and then the work that I'm doing with communities right now.
And and when you work on tapping into the energy of the heart, I think people are familiar with quieting the mind, but sometimes it kind of stops there. Um,
Yeah.
it's like they get that part, um, and but there can be sometimes like we turn left and like we think just feeling good or not feeling is kind of okay. I'm not feeling bad anymore, and but there's this next step. It sounds like of digging in. How do we tap into that heart space?
I think a lot of what our work is asking is how to be in our bodies,
Yeah,
right? It's not so much of a sometimes I think the trap with meditation is that people think, "Oh, I can just live in my mind." Right? And they don't remember, or they don't somehow understand that it's really what we're resting is the wisdom of the body, right?
yeah.
We're feeling sensation, we're identifying emotions, we're unlocking it energetically, versus doing this kind of maybe mental gymnastics, right? Where we think we can rationalize liberation, or we
Mhm.
we can convince ourselves, and for a long time we can, right, until we can't anymore, until
Yeah.
there's a kind of crisis, and then it forces us to feel what is true. It's like a kind of honesty that is required of all of us right now. But for a lot of us, it's just this training. And so, one of the things that, I use a lot of different approaches in my work, and having been trained in the Buddhist tradition for so long, one of the things I really appreciate is that first foundation of everything is like mindfulness of the body. And having spent so many years doing walking meditation, feeling my feet, feeling the steps, it's this training to live in versus in these stories.
Yes.
It's just a different reality. We start to oh, understand life differently through the body, through the sensations.
Yes. Yeah, I love that. I love walking meditation. And I love this idea of encouraging. awareness from the body. Um, and I think in my experience, it may start out that I don't feel anything. And then it's like the more we keep bringing the mind to that area, the more information starts to arise.
Absolutely. And I think for a lot of people, they are numb,
Yeah.
right? Because again, the conditioning is to the escape out, right? Through the mind, cut off the body, numb the body. Um, so we have to approach that very sensitively. There's a kind of kindness in coming back into the body. There's a kind of delicate process of making kind of a switch where we are less interested in the stories in the mind and we get more interested in what's arising in the gut, in the belly, and feeling our way through. And the more we do that, the more we see what is obvious, you know?
Mm. So do you recommend an approach of like dropping in, checking in throughout the day to remember? Like,
Yes,
yeah.
I believe like it's nice to do a long period of practice and I so love that. Sometimes I'll say meditation for an hour or more. But I found that this continual reconnection through feeling the breath, just the rise and fall, gives me a kind of ground again. So it's like momentary presence, and then the longer sits are really good. But the more we can just stop and breathe, we develop that habit to keep finding our ground, not so much in the stories, but in the presence of whatever is true.
Mm, yeah. It sounds like you're like really encouraging folks to stay in the moment, notice what's happening really in the here and now.
Yeah, because the political crisis or this, one can look at this so many ways, and we all do, and all of them are kind of true. Like it's like the great turning, it's the apocalypse, it's the end of an era, all the prophecies. But one of the difficulties with this sort of collapsing systemic process that's unfolding around us, it's so loud,
Yeah.
right? And there's so much taking us away from our own direct experience, right? We're just it's like this bombardment of energy. And so it's destabilizing. So right now, we have to be very intentional and dig really deep, like hold a line with our mind and our practice. I always see this like line of light, we're like holding it, and it requires a training. Actually, it requires a kind of discipline, because if not, we just get swept up in this tsunami of greed and hatred and delusion. It's so seductive,
Mhm.
right? It's
Yeah.
so overwhelming for many folks.
Yeah.
So this work of being present is another doorway.
What is the balance between like maintaining one's presence and not getting swept up in like someone else's story or the agenda that folks want to take us into, maybe to be afraid, right? To be disorganized,
Hmm.
to be disassociated from our power and our strength, and realistically planning for, the future, right? Like, how do we hold those two things?
It's a practice right now for all of us, right? We just start to do it. We start to observe ourselves. The first door is just coming into the body, right? And we trust that there's something about this body and all the DNA codes that we have, liberation, we're hardwired for it. It's our true nature.
Mm,
And so much of our work right now, and I know everyone uses that word remembrance, but we are remembering,
yeah.
we really are. We're remembering how to be present, how to navigate. And it's like we've gone from kind of kindergarten to, doctorate level, like practice time here, because of the intensity, it forces us to go deeper. And that's kind of the beauty of the moment in a
Yeah.
way,
Yeah.
is it calls on us to remember our light, remember our power, and to remember the practices that allow us to access that power.
It's so true. I mean, there's nothing like a good crisis to, like, call on all your strengths and
Oh, I mean,
capabilities.
historically, this is what the road of trials is about, if you
Yeah.
this is the hero's journey, right? We're out in the arena now, and and it's sharp and it's edgy and it's jagged, and it requires um a presence to stay sane.
Mm, yeah.
Again, those words, holding the line, I keep seeing that in my own practice. Like, no, I'm going to hold this line, of presence, and then heartfulness.
Yeah, do you wanna speak more to that? Maybe, um, returning back to that idea of heartfulness that we started with, what the Buddha had to say about being heart-centered and maybe some of the other traditions and practices?
Yeah, well, the thing about all of these great masters who have taught and they've left, whether it's Buddha, Maharajni, Krishna, they've left these maps behind, and they all point to this loving kindness, this unconditional compassion, and even the teachings of Jesus, it's like this forgiveness, this patient um quality that the heart brings. Like, we become patient in the onslaught of injustice and indignity, not the kind of patience that doesn't respond, but the kind of patience that seeks to understand,
Mm,
right? How do we become less um, caught in the suffering, but more rooted in the compassion? So, the heart practices, I don't really know how people will be able to get through this time without the qualities of metta and the qualities of loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. And these are the core pillars of the Dharma, right? We're shedding the illusion and we're planting the seeds all the time. So it's like we're pulling the old roots out, and then, we have this beautiful garden in our hearts and minds, and we're just putting these seeds in the ground. Um, and so this heartfulness also is during this time to, how do we care for ourselves and other beings?
yeah,
This kind of love and service. I think this is another thing, is when we're in our heart, we're naturally serving others. How can I help? What
yeah.
can I do? How can I support you? And it comes from a place of fullness, not some robotic guilt, but it comes from a natural expression of heart. We want to reduce suffering. And so these are the focuses of these ancient texts. This is the focus of the Buddha Dharma. It's like, yes, first we awaken, then we guide, and then we serve and build.
Mm,
Right? I always think of my life: first awaken, then guide, then serve and build. It's like my mantra, right? It's like, okay, what are we doing today? First we awaken. And so that gives me that momentum, and it gives me a sense of a map through this uncharted time.
that is so helpful. So helpful. I love that. Awaken, guide, serve, and build. I've been very much tapped into making sure I'm in a good place, making sure that I'm centered, that I'm grounded, I'm rooted, I'm in that heart space, and that I'm overflowing so that I have that to give to others. And I've also been in the mindset of not letting myself get to catastrophe to like do the work. So being very on top of it,
Hmm.
um, because of the urgency of the times, I think it requires that we're really watching ourselves for signs of dysregulation. Because, as you're saying, with holding the line and with being that person that can teach, that can serve, that extra care for ourselves seems to be really important.
Oh my gosh. I think this self-care, being rooted ourselves is a very big priority. There's a lot of activists that I've been meeting with and teaching, and they're not ready for this battle yet. I'm like, "Woo, this is not 2020. This is not,
Yeah.
2008. Like this is a whole nother game now." And I'm really, really encouraging people to not try to go out into a battle zone right now. You could get swept up in this tsunami if you're not rooted.
Yeah.
These energies are too fierce now, and too amplified, right? It's like, and so I keep really, really encouraging people, this is a time to go within and find that deeper resilience to root down.
Mm.
And I know there's work that needs to be done in the collective, of course, but if we're not really rooted, it's very easy to get swept up in this and become very dysregulated and in a state of complete despair.
Yes.
Yeah, so this is really key. It's like first ourselves, right? First we have to take the medicine. First we have to, then we're of use.
Yeah.
We're of value. And so, I mean, we're always of value, but we're then able to contribute to reducing the suffering of others. But it has to be where our cup is really full. And it may be that it's full on Monday, but not on Tuesday, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Tuesday we might be in the bed or whatever we need to do, or but okay, every day we're aiming and we're practicing. It's like I think the Buddha's path, I love how it's mapped because it gives us this practice. Like everything is a practice.
Hmm.
Every single thing, right? And that's part of our remembering is through the repetition. And so that just is a nice map, and there's so many beautiful maps out there, but that's one I'm familiar with. So heartfulness is at the center of everything. It's for that reason that we wake up, so that we can serve, right? It's the heart that says, all right, remember who you are, and remember you can do this,
Yeah.
right? You have the capacity. It's in your nature. It's woven into you. And and so I appreciate the focus on people healing their hearts right now. We've taken some blows, and it will continue for some time as this demolition energy is just unleashed on the planet,
Yeah.
And so we just have to remember that there's a higher power that we're learning how to access,
Mm.
you know. So thank you for reminding all of your listeners, first self. First,
Mm.
put your oxygen mask on before you put it on other, it's that.
Yeah, well, there is, there's this like righteous anger energy that can often be found, right, um, in some of the movements, right?
Hmm.
And I think there's some significance to it, but it can burn out very quickly, and
Absolutely.
it can turn on each other.
This is the most heartbreaking thing about the movement right now is it's so volatile,
Yeah.
and anger burns, but truth cuts,
Oh.
and so activism rooted in rage, it just kind of ends up burning everything down, and I understand the anger. My goodness, it's like, well, let's work with that. Let's feel that. Because look, it is, there's a lot of injustice and delusion, and it is angering. It's maddening, to
Yeah.
hear it, to listen to it, to see cruelty. I get the response of anger, but that cannot be the driving force, not in this new era, because we're matched with that. It's like, oh, anger for anger. Okay, here we go. It's a dance. Nobody wins, right?
Yeah.
It just until it's all destroyed, and that's the game of it all.
Yeah.
We're not really punished for our anger, we're punished by it.
Mm. Say more about that.
Well, that's a Buddhist quote, and he taught that. Like, we're not punished for the anger, we're punished by it because of its nature is anti-life, right? It's that squashing. And I don't mean the feeling of when we see injustice and we stand up and we say no, that soul force, kind of like Dr. King, like, we won't take this anymore, right? It's motivated by the people, the love.
Mhm.
Like, enough is enough. And
Yeah.
when enough people get like that, enough is enough rooted in the heart, there will be a big catalyst.
Yeah.
But yeah, but I understand, and I pray that our movement leaders begin to see another way of guiding and embodying freedom.
Mm. Yeah, me too. I'm thinking that the anger, is a mask for deep sadness and disappointment. Um, and in some ways, if we're stuck in depression, when I'm working with clients and I start to see the little fight in them, the anger, I'm like, that's
Mhm.
good because it has an energy to it that we can like work with.
Yeah.
On the other side, the flip side of that, if there's some sadness that hasn't been attended to, um, there might be some work to do there to be real about what the real emotion is. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I always feel that anger is grief.
Yeah.
It's just, when I was growing up in East Long Beach, I would see people fighting, growing up in the hood. It's just like, oh my God, everyone's so volatile and screaming. No one's feeling it all the time. It's just a kind of reactivity. But often when people would be really angry and in fights, they'd be crying at the same time.
Oh,
There's always a lot of tears with it, and it's right under the surface, and that's what the invitation for the heart is about, is like how we hold that, right? Learning how to feel that vulnerability. Like, we're all fragile in a way. We're so strong, but there's the fleeting fragility of this life. And to actually be with that truth of it,
yeah.
like this impermanence and this, like, we're here today, gone tomorrow, everything can change on a dime. One response is anger.
Yeah.
And we have to see that there's bigger causes and conditions behind things. But I understand that as an expression of grief, that frequency of rage. Um, but it just can't be the landing place. It's
That's
a
right.
it's a it's a process.
It's a
So
process.
mindful of getting stuck in that, and then feeding it day after day after day, right?
I love that. And I'd like to lean in more to something you just said about the impermanence, which is one of the I think the great teachings of the
Mhm.
Buddha, and something that I I keep as much as possible conscious throughout my day. Um, the not knowing, I think, is a an important place that a lot of us don't stand in very often. Um, when I'm thinking of like the anger and the sides and the this is how it's going to be, sometimes I feel there's a lack of the consciousness of like we don't know.
Mhm.
Can you
Yeah.
speak to that a little, or nurturing the impermanence of things, or the the changing and how much we can or cannot know, and what the teachings can show us about that?
Yeah, Octavia Butler, the writer, in her great book, The Parable of the Sower, was like, God is change, right? And so this continual letting go of what we think is what's happening, right? It's the impermanence also forces us into a letting go.
Mm,
Right, because the mind can't conceive of what's happening right now, not really, or where it's gonna go. We just make up a story about it. But what we do know is things are changing,
yeah,
right? We feel that. We feel a shift. We feel change, and that change is hard to be with, In the Buddhist tradition, that's one of the aspects of suffering is this constant, this continuous change, 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 change. I'm here and then I'm there and then I have this and then I don't. And then, I'm in love and then it's over. And then, it's like this. And it's so hard to hold it. And we don't know what's happening right now. It's a very prophecy time, though. I mean, if we look at all the Mayan prophecies point to right now, the Hopi prophecies, the Kobe people prophecies, the astrology is pointing us through that there's this powerful portal. And I think it rides on that uncertainty because that again forces us to cut through delusion,
Mm.
right? And our patterns. We're no longer, those old ways are not working, because the ground's shifting. We're quaking on uncertain ground. And so we don't know the outcome of this. It's painful, it's hard. And I trust in Dr. King would say the long arc of the universe bends toward justice, right? And I know nothing rooted in greed, hatred, and delusion ever lasts. So I take a lot of refuge in that. Like
Yeah.
nothing built on that lasts. So whatever we're experiencing now is just kind of like a portal, like a state of consciousness, and so we can trust that things are constantly changing, and things could shift in a dime in a second, and what's
Yeah.
going on in Washington or in the minds and hearts of the people, we don't
Can
we don't
happen
know.
very quickly.
Yeah, very quickly. So there's a certain kind of alignment with that, like we're on a ride and we have to kind of like surrender ourselves. I notice for me this need to know the steps beforehand. It's like, no, just walk.
Mm.
Like, we're not going to see the steps right now. We
That's very
just have
powerful.
to trust.
Yeah. I think a lot of us struggle with wanting to know how it's gonna go and,
Oh,
like,
oh
I
yeah.
do this, right?
Yeah, we want a map, we want a strategy, we want a business plan. Okay, I'm going to do this for the next 5 years and 3 years. And it's like those that hold that might be disappointed,
Yeah.
right? Because right now it is kind of like we're just one step, one step. And if we can trust that inner guidance, we'll make the right step, and our intuitive wisdom connected to our hearts. But it's really hard. I know every time I try to hold on to like tight on plans and schedules and people are planning 2028. I'm like, what? I don't I don't know. Okay, let's pretend we're gonna do that in that time, but I'm not sure here. And so that is hard. I'll just name that. We want consistency, we want sameness, we want predictability, but that's not what this human life is is about right now.
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, this is really a big one.
This is a big one. This is like, and that's why there's so much preparation. And I feel like these angels and guides and ancestors have left us the kind of pointing,
Yeah.
like, this is powerful moment here. This is transformative for those who can work with it like that.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, maybe, and I'm just taking one step by step with you, Spring, and
Exactly. We're
as
here now and then, and that feels right.
yeah, like, we were talking about that, like, not scripting this too much and just being with each other, and,
Yeah.
I'm just flowing with you, and as you brought in, like, the ancestors, and you named something that's very present in my practice currently that really never was before, but has suddenly become a huge part of my practice, and I know that that's an area that you're really connected to in your practice and work as well.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the work of the unseen world calling in. This is also something I think really unique about this opportunity in this moment is the veils are very thin.
Yeah.
When things are collapsing and there's cracks, like new information appears, right? It's
Yeah.
like, oh, wait, it fell apart, but wait, now there's something underneath that. And I do believe that the whole spirit world and our ancestors, they're coming online. They're giving power. They're giving us, I always think of it as these like DNA upgrades
Mm.
and remembrances, and they're walking with us and through us. And there's a lot of support. Those who can connect to that can find a lot of resiliency, you
Yeah.
know, huge
Yeah.
amounts.
Yeah. There's so much to say about this. I think for some people it's like, what? Spirits, ancestors? And that's okay. Um, but it might be an imagining. It could be bringing a photo near you when you practice. Just seeing what it brings up, what it conjures. I know that as I've started to work with this, it's just been incredible. The support that I've felt around me and the signs. And sometimes it's just taking that one step and asking. And as soon as you kind of signal that you're available, it kind of floods in.
Yeah, it's like we open up a door to it. And I know for a lot of people in the Western world, they don't see life in this lens, it's this scientific perspective, um, where we're cut off from all of life versus we're
Yeah.
open to this incredible mystery. I mean, they're finding universes on top of universes. I mean, this thing is big. So to think that we're an isolated individual and that, people who are not in a physical body no longer access us, it's just not like, if you go to any temple where there's like a deity practice, and like I just have a lot of friends in the Be Here Now network and for the Baba Ram Dass's channels. And I mean, Maharaji's alive. They'll tell stories. Ah, Maharaji was here this morning, So just because someone is no longer in a physical form, the consciousness now, we are working now with mind.
Yeah.
This is the air
Yes.
time. This is the age of everything now is a battle of consciousness. And so to access these energies of your benevolent guides and protectors and the wisdom that's in our DNA, this is very available. And, we're in a vast system. And I think a lot of people are understanding, they're awakening to something like how big this is. And yes, we're in a physical body, but we're infinitely connected to the stars, the sun, the moon, the universe. Everything is like the ecosystem. So
Yeah.
your ancestors are there very strong. I feel all of our ancestors are here for this moment of support.
Yeah. Yeah, I've even opened it up, with my clients in talk therapy, and some of them really like to talk about seeing their ancestors and speaking to their ancestors. And they provide also a vision for them of who they could be as they need to
Mhm.
rise in this time.
Yeah, and a grounding of there's something ancient in all of us,
Yeah,
you know? And it's coming back online. It's not familiar yet.
yeah,
It's like we're getting a familiarized with it. And
yeah,
so it's a big part of my practice as well. Huge.
yeah. Yeah, this, as you said, like there's something ancient in us. It just made me think like we don't need to even though this is new and like things are breaking and we've never been here before. At the same time, there's also something like there's that thread, there's that line of light that, and we don't have to totally reinvent like how we respond. So at the same time that everything's new, there's some connection, there's some heart sameness there.
Yeah, absolutely. There's something that's never been changed or something at the foundation of truth that sort of resonates, and we all have to kind of discover it and work with it. working with the light is also such a practice, right? It's like I always think of this like familiarizing myself, acclimatizing,
Mm,
right? Because we're so steeped in this kind of 3D world of form, and that's it, and mind and mechanical capitalistic vibration, right? It's like, oh, right, we're now in a life sustaining era.
mm,
And so we're learning how to embody and understand and receive and walk with. And that's also so much of the magic of this moment.
yeah. Yeah, the vulnerability.
It's all the things, right? I mean, if you're not going through all the things right now, then are you here? Are you working? Because it's like a daily, like one day feels very expanded, and then, one could experience a lot in one day if
Yeah,
we're practicing,
yeah,
right? Because there's also something moving fast here. As we see on the outer level, there's fast movements, right? If we say Washington, they're full on fat. There's a speed, and that also is in us. This, accessing our ancient memories is happening fast for some of us.
yeah, yeah. I like how you're making that parallel. It's like this rapid growth,
Yeah, it
internal
mirrors the
acceleration.
kind of like it's like things are getting better and worse, faster and faster and faster. Like, and there's like a tipping point like coming, right? And
Mm,
it's like, okay, well, let's feel into that.
yeah. Wow. A lot here in the space.
It's yeah, deep times we're in, and we can hold it. I do believe we choose, on some higher level.
Yeah,
We
to
choose.
come into this.
Yeah, we choose to practice in it.
Yeah.
It's like honing, but doesn't mean it's easy, that's for sure.
And I know a great figure that you've tuned in with is Harriet Tubman.
Yes, Mother Harriet.
Do you want to share a little bit about the wisdom that she's brought through you?
Sure. I'm still in this journey with this great ancestor of ours. I'll just say, first of all, she's for everyone. She has a special affinity for supporting Black communities, of course, just from the legacy. But it's bigger than that. She's like a primordial ancestor, And so as I'm learning through Harriet, it's how to stay the course, not to give up. Like there was something so relentless,
Mm,
like this push, and so, and also this care. She was such a protector spirit, right? And a guide. And now when I think about my core messages for Harriet Tubman, or as I bring her out, and I'm going to be starting my Church of Harriet Tubman again. I used to have this Sunday, and I really feel the Church of Harriet 5D now. It's consciousness.
take us to church,
I
Spring.
know. Oh, I have that side, especially now I'm in Georgia. It's like,
Yep.
oh my God, I have a tambourine. I'm like ready for Harriet Tubman. Harriet Tubman Dharma, which is, so much of that dharma is this inner underground railroad, and when she was alive, it was the physical one of all these safe houses, like taking people in prison to freedom. But now it's like she's working on the consciousness level through the mind, guiding us through this period. And so I feel so many of those ancestors all the time. The underground allies, those abolitionists, those really rooted in love and fearlessness too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So she teaches me how to work with fear.
Yeah.
Like she's like, sometimes fear is wisdom, but other times it's a trickster. And we have to discern the difference between those. So Harriet teaches me how to work with that
Mm,
fear of unknown, fear of oppression, fear of cruelty, fear of standing up, rising up, and so we're in deep training together with Mother Harriet. But she has some real medicine though for this moment because she has been here before. There is something about it being like the samsaric cycle. Like, hadn't we already like conquered this? Well, no, we're back again, right? That's how it goes though, right? More lessons.
Yeah,
And so Harriet just gives me so much strength, and that's her gift to everyone. In her presence, you feel like you could climb Mount Everest,
mm,
because she convinces you that you can attain liberation, whether it's literally leaving a horrible situation and moving into safety and love. So many of I'm sure your clients is like, even our lives, we can create hell. And how do we escape that? How do we move out of
yeah,
that? Right. Or picking people that hurt us and that addiction to that. And it's also, so now it's like she gives us this kind of path and support.
yeah. Well, I think, we'll send folks to your
Yes,
Church of
I'm gonna get
Harriet.
it started. It'll probably be in the next couple of months. I gotta get ready for that channel. It's like,
Yes.
all right, here we go.
Folks can prepare by reading your book,
Yes,
or her
yes.
book that was channeled through you. I don't know how you.
Yeah, folks can read that. And the thing I like about, I had some friends who were reading it again recently, and they said, what was so beautiful in that is that they said, your story went away and it was me and Harriet.
Mm,
And that's exactly what I wanted.
huh,
Like you and Harriet now. You know what I mean? I'm sort of just like this guide on something, but the story becomes less mine and more theirs. And that was a high compliment because the journey with Harriet is in everyone's heart. Like she's a
yeah,
deity, a prophetic deity that is reaching down right now into this realm full stamina. She was like, this work of liberation is not done and I want to see it done. And
yeah.
so you can take her hand.
I really believe that. I think I told you last time we spoke that I was having, like, Harriet, like, her name and, like, symbols of her wanting to come through for many years.
Mm,
Like, it was weird. Not weird, really, but, so I really believe that she is calling out to all of us, and, if who's ever listening to this right now, this is your sign to read
exactly.
a little
She's
more
showing
about
up
her.
somewhere in your consciousness if you're
Yeah.
listening to this.
Yeah,
Exactly.
just, like, let her in, whatever that is, like, look at her picture, read Spring's book, or read about her, because I think, like, she's coming through with a message, so, if you're hearing this, you're picking up on that.
100% agreed. And I feel like even though I've been working with Harriet with the writing process, but I'm still learning so much. She's also a profound teacher, and it's
Mm,
like, wow, how to have this heart,
yeah,
and that fearlessness. So courage is what's needed right now.
yeah, yeah. Spring, you're so unique in so many ways, but, the the different elements and teachers that you bring together, um, I think is very special. I think a lot of the Buddhist teachings have been passed down through a lot of white males,
Mhm. Mhm.
and we need female teachers, teachers of color, and we need these teachings coming through a different vessel and with a different context.
Mhm.
um, and I know you've been very important to this space in that way. I don't know if there's something you want to say about that, maybe how it's been for you, that
Mhm.
process. Yeah.
Well, thank you. I love the Dharma. I study all the time. I just love it. It's my medicine, right? And Buddha Dharma or aspects of, like, recently I started reading the Bhagavad Gita again because the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna and Arjuna are on the battlefield, right? And Arjuna's like, wait, I have to fight. The whole Bhagavad Gita is this fight. And so I was like really interested. Bhagavad Gita, Krishna, here we are. We're on this battlefield. Okay, I'm Arjuna. We're Arjuna. Okay, wait. I'm looking across and I see, my fellow humans, right? And
Yeah.
it's like, what is this fight? What is that whole story? So for me, studying and bringing these texts alive for the moment is important to me. And I think it's like as these energies are translated through different bodies and this theology, right? This liberation path is taught. It needs to go out in many, many different ways. And so sometimes I think when we have certain set of teachers, they only have that one channel for, you know, their platforms, maybe just one channel, a good channel, an important channel, but we are at a time where the Dharma has to be translated. And that's, I feel like one of my gifts is to try to translate it and
Yeah.
to try to make it relevant to every single person. If you're a mom with 4 kids and in East Oakland, or you're in Detroit, or you're, out somewhere in the world, like how do we make this accessible for this era?
Yeah.
So the Dharma doesn't change, but the translation and the communication. And so I appreciate the when people say they can hear the way I teach, that's wonderful, because I do try to make it simple, because in some way it is,
Mm,
like there's a simplicity, like we already know this, everyone. Like I'm
yes.
just really, it's in our bones, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it's so I feel like I'm at the beginning of that. And as I take on some of these core texts and start teaching them, it brings me joy in the new discoveries of how to translate into this time to different communities in South Georgia. How do I make the Dharma so clear? Right? And that
Yeah.
so people can hear it and it's not filtered through these other maybe misogynistic or old fashioned or conditioned ways, it's like freeing it, dusting it
Yeah.
off
Free the
again.
Dharma.
Yeah. And not to say those old systems don't work, but everything is meeting the moment,
Yeah.
It needs to be right for this moment in time and this community that are needing it, um, as the ground. So thank you. I appreciate that reflection. And I just, yeah, I love to study it. It never gets old to me.
Yeah, it's amazing to hear you say, like, "I'm at the beginning of it," when you're such a seasoned teacher.
It's that beginner's mind, because right now it all seems new,
Mm,
right? As I go back to even reading texts like the Bodhisattva Way of Light for the 100th time, it's new now. Like,
yeah,
wow, I'm finding something in this, so I love to be a beginner.
I love that. Yeah, and I've had several really wise teachers speak to, like, "You don't need to read so many things, read the core text over and over again for that reason."
Absolutely.
It's
Yeah.
like we it's part of that thirst for answers that sometimes we just, like, hungry and we read so many things, but it sometimes misses the embodiment of, like, sitting with a text over time.
Yeah, like some of the Tibetan masters, they would give a teaching on a text for a year.
Yeah.
Right? And they were like, "Wow, we only got through one chapter. It's been 5 months of a retreat." You know what I mean? It's like that's the kind of program shift, right? Right now we're like, "Okay, I read that 5 minutes, click." It's kinda like the TikTok dharma or something like, "Okay, I'm on to the next, I'm on to the next, I'm on." And it's like nothing kinda goes deep, and
Mm,
I get it. It's just the way this life is unfolding, that kind of rapid fire, So we have to really, yeah, slow down and just meditate on just lines of text.
yeah.
Right now, I'm kind of doing that with the Bhagavad Gita as I try to understand Krishna and Arjuna's conversations on the battlefield and what does it mean for the moment.
Yeah. I love that. I love the Gita, and I love just opening up to a page and
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, or the Tao Te Ching or anything, and just like find your core wisdom and come back to it, and back when you forget, try to remember it.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah. The remembering. Spring, that's so beautiful. We covered so much ground. Is there
Yeah.
anything that I didn't ask you that is important to bring into this conversation right now?
I guess the only thing I would add into this for the community is just that, to take refuge in the people who really understand and love you.
Mm,
Right. That right now it's almost like we're finding, I mean, I'll use this word soul tribe, but that's a modern translation of Sangha, you
yeah.
know, the people who are on the same frequency, who care about the same things, who practice the same things, who want to live a life of, waking up and guiding and building, and surround yourself with those folks right now. We need each other, right? We're in the thick of things, and we need to root down together, so that's the jewel of the dharma that is so essential for right now too, is finding our people
Yeah.
and being with them, and sort of that collective circling, and it helps us deepen our wisdom, right? It gives us faith. There's
Yeah.
something beautiful about the community. So when folks are out there and they feel they are so lost, right? First go out and stand on the earth, and then remember, like, who are your people? And they may not be even in your field quite yet, but the more you ask that question, the more you focus on vibrating my soul tribe, my community, my sangha, it will find you. You become a lighthouse for it, and then
Mm,
the ships just come in. So this is another big thing, as we will be building new communities, I feel, shortly, of people working together and strengthening together. So that's just a way I find resiliency.
no, I really appreciate you bringing that in and also answering my unspoken question of like tips for how folks can find their people. I really liked what you said about going out into the earth and calling it toward you. And I think like attracts like. So resonate
Yeah, and
the way that
pray.
you want the
Yeah.
people around you to resonate.
Yeah, and be willing to let go of those who are dysregulate your nervous system,
Yeah.
who you don't feel safe around. That's kind of like we're moving away from that. Our people, when we're together, we find a harmony. You know,
Yes.
there's
Yeah.
a comfort, a sense of safety. So yeah, stand on the earth, pray that prayer. It will be answered. It is being answered.
Mm, it is being answered.
Yeah.
And if folks can find you and practice with
Yeah,
you
they
and
can
join some of
find
your
me.
communities,
Yeah, they
maybe?
can find me anytime online. I also teach on Tuesday night. Every Tuesday night, I go live teaching a heart medicine
Oh,
practice.
yeah.
So you can join up. There's no cost. It's all offering. And I teach a meta practice and give some heart medicine teachings. And so people can join on to that. Or,
How
yeah,
can they find that?
they can find that. They can just Google it. They go to my website. There's a page that says Tuesday Night Heart Medicine.
Okay.
And it's just, yeah, I invite anyone and everyone. It's a really powerful group of people we gather.
I bet.
Many people. We're practicing this meta for ourselves. We're really focusing on us taking the medicine of
Mm.
love for ourselves. So
Oh,
yeah, so I'm loving that.
yeah. I'm gonna get a group together and join.
I would love that.
Yeah. We need that heart medicine and that community. Thank you so much, Spring. This has been such a pleasure.
Oh, thank you too. And I just send so much blessings for this episode, and may it find the beings who need to hear it and resonate it. And thank you for doing your work.
Thank you.